One of the concepts we want to help you understand is determining what the domain of a composite function is. We're able to handle the domain of individual functions, polynomials or linears or rational expressions. Here we have a function of a function, or a composite function. The one that we want to look at is f composed of g of x. I have two examples up here. Both of my functions are polynomials. One's a quadratic and one's a linear. And neither one of them in their own right have any domain restrictions. And so therefore when I take a function of a function where both do not have a domain restriction, the composite will also not have a domain restriction. But let me contrast that with the second example that we have. F of x equals 1 over x plus 2, and g of x equals 4 over x minus 1. Well, you can see that both functions in themselves have some domain restrictions. G of x can never have a denominator of 0. And that will happen when x equals 1. So I have to ensure that g of x does not include 1. And so therefore I'm going to exclude 1 from my domain. Additionally, I see in f of x that x cannot equal a negative 2. So I have to make sure that g of x will never equal negative 2. And the reason why I have to find out that g of x never equals negative 2, because f circle g of x means that I'm taking this function of this value. So g of x equals 4 over x minus 1, and I want to find out what happens if it ever equals negative 2. What's the value that it does that at? So to solve that out, I'll get 4 equals negative 2 times x minus 1. And I discover that x equals negative 1. So I must also exclude negative 1 from my domain. So those are my domain restrictions when I look at f composed of g of x. First of all, I want to find out, where does g of x crash at? It crashes when its denominator becomes 0, and in this case x equals 1. Then I'm concerned about what happens when g of x, its value, makes this denominator crash. And that happens when x is 2 or negative 2. And I found that happens when x becomes a negative 1. So my domain restrictions for this composite function are the values 1 and negative 1. Every other number will be fine. This will take a little bit of time for you to think through, grapple with a couple of examples as you start to get a feel of what's happening. Because composite functions are something that we really haven't worked with that much before, or it's a little bit of a new idea. It's not that difficult, it's just new. So spend some time getting to know it.